Poppy Playtime is finally releasing an employee handbook. However, this specific book was actually owned by a previous employee with the initials PW. Thanks to this person, we get a bunch of new information about what was going on behind the closed doors of Playtime Co. The full book releases on May 7th, but right now, on the Scholastic website, we can preview some of the pages. So let's jump into what we can see about this handbook so far. The description of this handbook reads, "Welcome to Playtime Co. Don't mind the toys, they are all harmless, mostly. This in-world orientation notebook to the viral video game Poppy Playtime teaches gamers everything they need to know to be the very best employee. The orientation notebook even includes exclusive secrets not found in the factory. It may be your first day on the job, but don't worry, this notebook will show you the ropes. Just remember, feel free to explore, uncover secrets, and most importantly, survive. Filled with lore straight from the game's creators, handwritten notes, incident reports, and so much more." So, like I mentioned, throughout this book, the previous employee added notes to certain parts that tells us what's really going on. The first note reads, "I received this book a few months ago. I was curious about what they'd say and what they wouldn't, so I read it cover to cover. This company is funny in that way, only handing me a book like this a few years in. I still don't understand why they hired me, a biologist, to do research and development at a toy factory. They said I had exactly the skills they wanted, but they were vague about what exactly they wanted my skills for. I've been at Playtime a while now, and it turns out there's a lot of stuff they do here that isn't in the handbook, so I'm adding a few notes of my own. This company is not what they make it out to be." That in itself is a ton of information. This employee was actually a biologist that was hired by Playtime Co. to do research and development. She had the perfect skill set. Now, why would a toy company need a biologist? Well, of course, for the research behind the Bigger Bodies initiative. But it's interesting that this employee doesn't actually know that. Either they're not mentioning it, or Playtime Co. would hire people like this just in case they needed them. This makes me wonder if any of the other employees, including us the player, would have a science background. The next few pages go on about welcoming the employee and explaining what Playtime Co. is. However, the handbook mentions that there were rumors about Playtime Co.'s declining profits, and the people spreading these rumors were only competitors and disgruntled ex-employees. Considering the note that says, "Yeah right, keep telling yourself that," these rumors were likely true. I mean, what goes up must come down. And we read later on that the Smiling Critters disaster was a problem. That likely cost them a lot of money. The next part, that includes notes, talks about cleaning and their surveillance system. Playtime Co. expected cleanliness of not only the factory, but also their employees, no matter what, telling them to keep their hands washed before going onto the factory floor. The note next to this says, "They can be very weird about this. Random inspections to make sure everyone's fingernails are clean, that kind of thing. This is probably because of the experiments. They didn't want to risk anyone getting sick inside of the factory, as all medical procedures are extremely sterilized and clean." The notebook then continues with how the surveillance system is very important to their safety, and any attempt to interfere with it will result in termination. They watch everything because they care. But we know that's not entirely true. The note also confirms this, saying, "Of course, the downside of spying on everyone all the time is there are lots of videotapes of what goes on at the factory. Official policy is to record over them after they're reviewed, but sometimes a copy of something they don't want anyone to see slips through the net." I've jotted down some stuff I found out from these tapes, so hopefully we get to see these notes that this person has written down about the tapes. Obviously, we have seen a bunch of these tapes already, but I'm sure this person will give us some new information about them that we'll learn when the full handbook is released. Another section talks about the higher-ups at Playtime Co. A note reads, "I actually haven't met most of them. We very rarely see the higher-ups. Occasionally, when things go wrong, they put in an appearance. This doesn't surprise me. The higher-ups to any big corporation rarely step foot inside of the actual location. But it's interesting that Playtime Co. actively shows them off, even when they're not around. They must have not actually cared about the message Playtime Co. was trying to promote. What a shocker." Leith Pierre, as we know, was the head of innovation. It stated how he planned for the future of the toys. He drives his team hard, but he gets results. The note next to this reads, "Leith has begun to take over. Thinks he's carrying Elliot's work, his traditions." It seems like Leith Pierre wasn't as friendly as we were led to believe. As we know, he would often mistreat the employees under him, speaking rudely and frequently threatening to fire them. And there are a bunch of examples of this. But this note says thinks he was carrying on Elliot's work. Therefore, he must have been continuing things in a more sinister direction to what Elliot was doing, which doesn't surprise me. Stella Graber Graber was the head of Playcare. The book mentions how she was the heart of the company and never wanted to grow up. Her note reads, "Stella is a very odd individual, like weird even by Playtime standards. There's a tape somewhere of an internal interview she did where she talks about how you can't stay young forever, and then compares people to trees. Apparently she's like that all the time." Now, Stella heavily implies that she cares about the orphans and how you can't stay young forever. However, she was part of the Bigger Bodies initiative, as proven by the cross-department report. So this could have all just been a crazy facade she was putting on to feel less guilty about what she was really a part of. There's a lot to be said about Stella, but that's for a different video. Eddie Ritterman was the head of research. The book tells us that he was working on new facilities at the factory. This of course was likely the Bigger Bodies facility. The note reads, "No one has met Eddie as far as I can tell. Everything I know about him is just rumors. He does exist though, I think." Now, I think nobody has seen Eddie because he doesn't want anyone to know what he looks like. That way he can't be tied back to the Bigger Bodies initiative. This is why nobody has seen him, but I'm sure we will learn more about that in this handbook. Jimmy Roth was the chief marketing officer. His marketing techniques have helped take Playtime Co. to the next level. Jimmy has two notes. The first one talks about how he is great at convincing people he's a genius, how all of the executive staff seem impressed by him, but he takes credit for everything, even taking credit for making Huggy Wuggy blue. The second note reads, "Wonder if Jimmy's reputation will survive the Smiling Critters fiasco. I don't even know if the cartoon was his idea, but it sounds like pure Jimmy to me. You can be sure that if it had been a success, he'd have taken the credit, but as it wasn't, I'm sure he tried to blame someone else. So Jimmy sounds like a hothead, the friend in the group project that doesn't do much but takes all the credit. It seems like these Smiling Critters were his idea, however they were not as successful as we were led to believe, which is kind of interesting." Now, there's a third note on the page talking about Harley Sawyer. Reading, "There's no entry for Dr. Harley Sawyer, head of special projects, known to most as the Doctor. He's heading up the Bigger Bodies initiative and thinks he can save the company. He won't listen to anyone. The special projects is likely a department for new ideas that might not be very humane, like the Bigger Bodies initiative. As we know, Harley Sawyer was the doctor that would conduct experiments on the orphans, which led to the creation of the Bigger Bodies initiative. So this is likely why there is no entry for him. He needed to remain anonymous." There is also a page about the products, or in other words, the Bigger Bodies. It explains how the Bigger Body experiments are not just products, but rather colleagues. The page talks about how employees need to present these characters as friends no matter what. Any way else could damage the public perception of them. The employees would need to tell the public about the amazing connection they all have with the beloved characters, rather than the truth. This shows the drastic steps Playtime Co. would take to keep them looking perfect. The last part I want to talk about is from a preview photo. It has more information about the Bigger Bodies initiative, how there was a separate handbook for the experimental program, something I'm sure will come out in the future. The notes here explain how Playtime Co. was struggling after the Smiling Critters disaster. Profits were down and the employees started to see things that they shouldn't. Dr. Sawyer thought he could fix all of these problems with the experimental program, having giant toys with a living consciousness, how they could work for the factory. No other higher up employees questioned this because they were desperate to turn the company around. A nursery full of orphans and no one would know if anything happened to them, meaning the doctor had free reign to experiment on any of them. What a terrifying thing to think about. And that is just a glimpse at what this handbook has to offer. There are going to be a lot more secrets to uncover once it's released. So that is all the info about this handbook so far. Clearly this is going to reveal a ton of new information about the Bigger Bodies initiative and some of the secrets behind Playtime Co. So I'm pretty excited for it. Expect a video from me once it releases. Are you going to be checking out this book? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you like horror game content like this, please consider subscribing. Also, if you want to support the channel more, you can become a member. Don't forget to follow my Twitter at TerrifiedT. Thanks for watching.